Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You know how this works.
Hmm.
We take a passage, we break it down, and see what gems we can unearth. And today, we're diving into something pretty powerful.
Definitely powerful.
It's from the book of James,
Okay.
chapter 4.
Right.
And this is the section that, well, it talks about a lot. Desire, humility, and this whole idea of like the world kind of pulling us in different directions.
Yeah,
I feel like it's one of those passages people quote, but maybe don't always like fully understand. So let's really unpack it.
I think that's a great idea. You know, what strikes me right away is how James just cuts right to the chase. He goes straight to the root of conflict. And it's not like pointing fingers at external
It's not
circumstances.
like blaming other people.
Exactly. It's like, nope.
Yeah.
He says it's our own desires. They're the fuel for all this conflict and quarreling.
Okay. So it's not this situation, it's our reaction to it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay.
And he uses this like really stark image to drive the point home. He says, you desire but do not have, so you kill.
Whoa. That's intense. He means like literally killing.
No, no, no. It's definitely a metaphor.
Okay, good. Good. So a metaphor for what?
It's like, think about all the ways we kill things in our lives, but not literally, right? Like relationships,
Oh, okay.
opportunities,
Yeah, yeah.
our own peace of mind. We get so fixated on what we want, on those desires, and we end up destroying so much in the process.
That's a really good point. I mean,
Yeah.
it really makes you stop and think, right? Like, what am I killing in pursuit of my own desires?
Right.
Hmm. There's also that phrase, asking with the wrong motives.
Hmm.
That really jumps out at me.
Mhm.
Like, it feels super relevant today.
Absolutely. It's interesting because James specifically talks about prayer here.
Okay.
He's saying we can even approach something as sacred as prayer with, like, totally selfish intentions.
Really?
And that's the problem. It's not about what we're asking for on the surface. It's about why do we really want it?
So our true intentions matter.
Big time. And this kind of leads into this bigger concept that James keeps circling back to. He calls it friendship with the world.
Okay, so now I'm curious. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, are we supposed to reject everything in the material world?
Not necessarily. It's not about like renouncing possessions or anything. It's more about where our hearts are invested.
Oh, I see.
What are we giving our attention to? Our energy.
So what we prioritize in our lives.
Exactly. And he's saying that some things, some values, some pursuits, they can pull us away from a deeper connection with God.
Okay.
It's a tension that a lot of spiritual traditions talk about, actually.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we prioritize worldly things above our spiritual connection, we create a kind of distance.
Precisely. And James, he doesn't mince words here. He says that choosing this path of worldliness can make us enemies of God.
That sounds pretty harsh.
I know, but I don't think he's trying to be judgmental, you
No.
know? It's more like a natural consequence. If we shift our allegiance, the attraction weakens.
Like a magnet that's flipped.
Yes, exactly like that.
I like that. So then he kind of sets up this contrast.
Mm-hmm.
He says, God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble.
Right.
Okay. So why is humility so crucial here?
Well, think about it. When we're full of pride, our ego gets inflated.
Yeah.
Our desires become like these urgent demands. And when we don't get what we want,
We get frustrated.
frustrated, angry, conflicted, it all spirals. But humility is the antidote.
So it kind of brings us back down to earth.
Yeah, it helps us see ourselves in perspective.
That makes sense. You used the word opposes earlier.
Yeah.
That feels a bit, I don't know, kind of harsh.
Hmm.
Like, how does that fit with this idea of God being loving and merciful?
I don't think it's about punishment, like
Ah.
God striking us down or something. It's more about spiritual principles at play.
Oh.
Pride builds walls. It creates a barrier between us and the divine. But humility opens the door.
So it's less about God opposing us and more about us closing ourselves off.
Exactly.
That's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah.
So how do we cultivate this humility?
Well, James actually gives us some pretty practical steps.
He does.
Yeah.
Okay, lay it on me.
All right. He says, submit to God, resist the devil, draw near to God, purify your hearts, grieve your wrongs, and humble yourselves.
Okay, that's a lot. Let's unpack that a bit. What does
Okay.
it even mean to purify our hearts? Like, what does that look like practically?
It's like doing some soul searching, being really honest with yourself about what's motivating you
Yeah.
and being willing to let go of those things that are, well, kind of toxic. Bitterness, resentment, those desires that are ultimately harmful.
It's about choosing what truly feeds our soul. you
Right,
know.
exactly.
Okay, and how about grieving your wrongs? Does that mean like wallowing in guilt?
Not at all. It's about acknowledging the harm we've caused, taking responsibility for it, and then seeking true forgiveness. Oh,
Both for ourselves and for those we've hurt.
that's powerful. He also has some pretty strong words about judging others. How does
Yeah.
that tie back into this idea of humility?
Well, I think when we judge others, it often comes from a place of pride. We put ourselves above them,
Oh, yeah.
like we're somehow better. And we forget we all have our own flaws.
Big time. So, in this world of constant online criticism and negativity, how can we actually live this out?
It's tough, for sure. But I think it starts with remembering that everyone is on their own journey.
Yeah.
And instead of jumping to judge, what if we try to understand,
Hmm.
offer compassion instead of criticism? It's a challenge, but it's so worth it.
It really is. I'm also struck by how James challenges those who, confidently make plans for the future. Like they're in complete control.
Right. He uses this really powerful image.
Oh,
He
yeah.
compares life to a mist.
A mist.
Yeah, something that appears for a little while and then vanishes.
That's a good one. It's a reminder that we're not really in control.
We like to think we are.
We do. But ultimately, there's a bigger plan at play.
That's humbling, for sure. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. Thanks for walking us through it.
My pleasure. It's always great to unpack these powerful passages.
It really is.
Yeah.
As you all go back and reread James 4, I want you to think about something.
Okay.
In a world that's constantly telling us to strive, to control, to acquire more and more, what if the real path to peace and fulfillment lies in embracing humility, in surrendering to something greater than ourselves?
That's a great question to ponder.
It is. All right, everyone. Until next time, happy diving.